on a Wednesday. We are approaching the midway point before the game on Sunday between the Chiefs and the Eagles. We will talk more Chiefs, more Eagles coming up today. We'll hear from Patrick Mahomes, Chris Jones, Andy Reid again as they're continuing to meet with the media this afternoon. A little health update. Spags versus Jalen Hurts. We are going to get into maybe the biggest matchup in this game. We'll get a lot here. Everyone loves the list. Continuing our Super Bowl theme. Memorable plays. Memorable plays that you have watched. Okay. Now, if it's in the, William the Fridge Perry, we weren't around for that. If you thought that was memorable,
memorable for you, not for us.
Not for us. So we will get to our most memorable Super Bowl plays as we continue. Everyone loves the list today. Get a little cats and a little horned frogs. Don't apologize, K-State fans. Never apologize for when and who you play against. We will get to that here today. Hit us up on our Big O Tires text line, 785-272-9429. Let us know how you're feeling right now at the Wednesday mark. Were you feeling a little bit that the Eagles are going to take care of business, or are you feeling a little bit more that the Chiefs are going to as your mindset shifted a little bit? Let us know on our Big O Tires text line. A little injury updates for you. Patrick Mahomes, according to Andy Reid, is almost about 100%. Patrick Mahomes said the same thing. Says Andy Reid says he can pretty much do everything he can in the playbook. He is going to say that. If that is true or not, does make a big difference in this game. A real big difference in this game for his ankle. Can he get outside the pocket? Can he make the throw? And if he does that, is he able to do it again? Because we know once he went and rolled out to his left and threw that ball to McCole Hardman and came up gimpy, he was a completely different mobile guy trying to cut and to move. Now, could he run straight? Yes, we saw that because he ran for 5 yards at the end of the game to go out of bounds. So that is a positive situation. A couple of the Chiefs players got, a little bit of cold-like symptoms. Chris Jones, Frank Clark had a bit of the sniffles today, but it is only Wednesday. It is only Wednesday. Here's hoping that Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, they get the sniffles out of it. But Chris Jones actually had to get up from his media availability today and had to go blow his nose. So he even mentioned that. So that's kind of the biggest news for the Kansas City Chiefs. An injury report will come out today. So we'll see what Kadarius Toney, what Juju Smith-Schuster are dealing with. We know L'Jarius Sneed, good to go. No issues there. It comes down to two other guys. Toney, Juju. And if you really think maybe Willie Gay. See, I wonder about Willie Gay's shoulder after he makes one big tackle. Is he able to continue to play, or is that shoulder going to be too painful to play? That's one aspect that we haven't talked a lot about is Willie Gay, and that's going to be big stopping the Eagles' run defense. But I want to discuss what Steve Spagnuolo is going to do against this Eagles team. I thought this was real good. This is from Shea Capaldi from The Ringer, and he says this. I think the Chiefs have experienced a bit of a shift in how they play defense under Steve Spagnuolo. They played more man coverage. They played man coverage on just 28% of opponents' pass plays this season. That marks the Chiefs' lowest percentage in any season under Spagnuolo. The numbers suggest that you play zone against Jalen Hurts. Here are the splits. And this isn't super analytic, VORP, and all that kind of stuff.
You and VORP.
All right. It's Oh, does he throw the football better against man or zone? That's pretty simple. Anybody can kind of dissect that. How often do you play man? How often do you play zone? Jalen Hurts against man coverage this year ranks second in the NFL and sixth in success rate going up against man. That's pretty darn good. Jalen Hurts against zone coverage, 21st in the NFL and 19th in success rate. It ain't no secret. If you play Jalen Hurts, man coverage, he's going to take care of you. If you play zone, you've got a chance. Now, here's the biggest problem with, well, Jake, just play zone. Seems easy, right? Why doesn't anybody play zone? Because of, very simply, the running game. If you play zone, that means your safeties are playing up and they are playing in the box if you're going to stop the run. That's the reason why you play zone versus you play man. If you're going to play zone against the Philadelphia Eagles, Brian Cook, Juan Thornhill, and Justin Reed, one of those three or two of those three are in the box. If you don't, then the Eagles will run it all the way down your throat. You have to have hard charging safeties to stop the run if you play zone defense. Otherwise, you would play zone no matter what because Jalen Hurts is not going to beat you. 21st in the NFL against zone, that's well below league average. It's hard to stop the run if your safeties are back deep. And that is why there's a lot of times you have to play man so that way it gets your safeties in the box so you can stop the run. And a lot of this, how do you stop the run? You play man defense. You get everybody near the box, you stop the run. Guess what Jalen Hurts does? You're up 14-3. You're up 17-7. You're running the football. You call man coverage because you got to stop the run because they're just going to pound it. That's what they do. That is what the Eagles do. And then they get you over the top when you play man defense. That is why Jalen Hurts is so successful against man, because it's simply me versus you. It's Devonta Smith versus Jalen Watson. It is A.J. Brown versus Trent McDuffie. Who wins? Devonta Smith is the Heisman Trophy winner, top 10 pick. A.J. Brown is a top 10 wide receiver in the NFL. Devonta Smith is one of the most underrated wide receivers in the NFL, and I've said that from the beginning.
Yeah.
Like, who are you taking? McDuffie, Watson, or Smith and Brown? You're going to take Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown, which is why the run in this situation, when they are taking care of business and are leading, opens up the pass. To me, it's more interesting that Steve Spagnuolo has played more zone this year than he has ever played as the Kansas City Chiefs defensive coordinator. Is that because of the young secondary? Is that because, hey, we know if we play man-to-man, there's a better chance that our rookies are going to get beat. So that's why we're going to play a lot of zone this year. That, to me, is more interesting than Jalen Hurts' man zone. Like, I can totally understand that. His Jimmies are better than your Joes, and so man-to-man defense benefits the guys with the Jimmies and the Joes. But to me, 21st in the NFL against the zone? That isn't good. And it sets up well for the Chiefs because they play right now more zone than they've ever played before. And we normally think of what? Spag's going to Spags. He's going to bring the heat.
The press man.
You know what I mean? Like, he's going to go. Like,
yeah.
And this is why I think Steve Spagnuolo might be the most important individual outside of Hurts and Mahomes, what he decides to do. What is his game plan? Because, and maybe I'm starting to see that I'm in the minority of this. We've had Matt Derrick on. We've had we've had Adam Teicher on. We've had a lot of people on. Even Dan yesterday or 2 days ago when I asked him yesterday. Today does not feel like a Wednesday. It feels like
my days have been thrown off all week.
It feels like a Friday. Honestly,
yes,
it feels like a Friday.
I will brutally be honest.
Yeah.
My days have been screwed up as well.
They all said the same thing. They all said it's the Eagles' defense, and that's what makes this game so unique to me. Is I don't even think it has anything to do with the Eagles' defense. This is all about the Chiefs' defense. I think the Chiefs' offense is going to score. This isn't like the Super Bowl against Tampa Bay where like, oh my gosh, look at this great pass rush for the Eagles. It's incredible. The Chiefs' offensive line this year compared to 2020 is, I mean, we're talking one of the worst offensive lines for a single game against a top 10 offensive line right now. So that's why I'm not worried. I think the Chiefs are going to score. I am not worried about the Chiefs' offense. It is all about the Chiefs' defense. And what do they do to slow down Jalen Hurts? Him throwing the football, him running the football, the zone read. Even today, Chris Jones said, yeah, we haven't seen anybody like Jalen Hurts this year. It's because no one does the zone read. Nobody does it like the Eagles do. The closest person who does the zone read is Lamar Jackson, and the Chiefs have not played Lamar Jackson this year, and the time that they did was 2 years ago, and it did not go well for the Kansas City Chiefs. That's why I think it is so much about the Chiefs defense. Do they blitz, Jalen Hurts? And we're going to get into that later. Or do they just say, hey, you know what? It's stop the run. We got to find a way to stop the run. The best way to stop the run is play man. Well, if you play man, Jalen Hurts is really good against zone. When do you bring pressure? I think Steve Spagnuolo is the most important person in this game, not named Jalen Hurts or Patrick Mahomes, for what he decides to do. What are the adjustments that they're going to make? If the Eagles march it down the field running the football right up the gut, what are they going to do? Is he going to abandon his game plan of playing zone? Because it looks like he's going to play zone. 28% of the time on opponents' pass plays this year, they have played man defense. That means 72% of the time they are playing zone. Can you play zone? If the Chiefs can play zone and stop the run, the Chiefs are winning this football game.
So I'm with you there. And here's where I'll go on both these fronts. I think you are correct that the Chiefs defense is important. And how they go about attacking Jalen Hurts and this Eagles run game is important because you have to keep points off the board. However, I do fully understand where the focus is on the Eagles defense is. Because for the Eagles to play successfully, they have to play from ahead. They have to.
So you're going from like maybe I'm looking at it from the Chiefs' perspective, where the Eagles' perspective, the most important aspect of this is the Eagles' defense.
Yeah, and I think the perspective, and I think that's kind of where it's at here, because of the way I view it is, and what truly is important is you have to view it from both teams' angles. The Chiefs can kind of play whatever game you want to play. If they're behind, the Chiefs coming from behind are the best team in the league. When they play behind, they're the best team in the league.
This is what's fun about this. This is from Timo Risky. He says here, passing offenses when trailing. The Chiefs are just incredible.
They lap the field.
0.31 is what the Chiefs are at. Okay, don't worry about the stat, just 0.31. The next team is the Bengals at 0.14. They're more than double when it comes to passing offenses when trailing. Yeah. And he says this, it's amazing how the Mahomes-led Chiefs consistently lap the field in this statistic every year, even without Tyreek Hill. The Eagles like to play comfortably with a lead. Hey, guess what? The Chiefs like to play from behind. He says unstoppable force meets a movable object.
And that's my big point to this, and why I think it actually, it is important to know what the Chiefs will do defensively. I think they are going to keep up this zone employment, and they partly have been doing it because of the young guys. A way to try and get some young guys acclimated is play zone. Less is just fully on their shoulders. It's more of a teamwork and communication aspect. But I think Spags will roll the dice with some man blitzes and things like that. I think we'll see one of the more creative game plans from Spagnuolo in a while. The important thing to me this way, if we're going to look at some defenses here, is the Chiefs' offense can overcome if their defense screws up.
Correct.
That Eagles' offense can't. And I think that's where there's kind of been more of a focus from the people we've talked to and even national media about, what is the Eagles defense going to do? I think you're right in your confidence level and, Chiefs are going to score points. Well, then that puts still a lot of pressure on the Eagles defense, because if this game is a shootout, if this is an old-fashioned barn burner, I mean, you give it to the Chiefs 9 out of 10 times, because the Chiefs offense is built for barn burners. It's throwing it up and down the field. It's scoring through the air, which is the often quicker, more efficient metric. Eagles can't really play a barn burner because they score by running. They are efficient by running, which, as we all know, eats up the most clock.
That's why I think this game is
fascinating.
So fascinating. But also I am bummed. Like if I will say this, if the 49ers had Brock Purdy the entire game and the Eagles did the same, let's say the results stayed the same.
Yeah.
I would be very, very worried about the Chiefs.
I agree. No, I'd agree.
I'd be very worried for the Chiefs. If the Eagles were able to just stomp out the 49ers with Brock Purdy at quarterback for an entire 4 quarters, because we saw it against Seattle. Brock Purdy, Seattle's a 1-possession game at the half. And then second half, they just destroyed Seattle.
Yeah, ran out the gym.
But I don't know about this Eagle defense yet.
And
that's
I think
the reason why.
I know, and I'm with you. I think that's what makes this so interesting. I think, as we're on this idea of, what are the Chiefs defense going to do, which is going to be so intriguing. And I think, I truly think we're going to see one of the most complex and varied game plans from C. Spagnuolo in his time. I think he's going to get in his bag. I really do. Spag is going to spag in one of the most intricate ways, I think, in a while. But defense as a whole, I think both these offenses, in a way, can either overcome their defense's shortcomings or need their defense to help them out. And so that's why I think that side of the ball for both teams is going to be so interesting to watch.
We got a lot to get to. Coming up next, NFL prints money, part 830, and we're going to tell you why they are just a money-making machine. We'll talk a little hoops, and we'll get to our Super Bowl prop bet of the day. We'll get to that coming up here on Mic'd Up. Prince Money edition number 840. I don't know if you know this, but we're going to tell you about it. So the NFL and Raj is going to have his State of the Union address here coming up.
Wow, 2 State of the Unions on back-to-back nights.
How about that?
Crazy.
The NFL just signed a deal with DAZN. I think that's how you.
I think it is. I've never used their product.
It's all caps DAZN.
I believe it is DAZN.
DAZN.
Stupid.
But their deal to stream games globally is said to be worth $1 billion via Forbes. So that is over a 10-year period. So that is $100 million a year of additional income for the NFL. One of the sites I follow on social media is called Sports TV Ratings. Very plugged in. It's a very, if you're interested in media and TV numbers and all that, you need to follow TV Sports Ratings. And this is what TV Sports Ratings says. $1 billion over 10 years, $100 million a season is a yawn emoji by U.S. NFL media rights standards. That's where we're at, folks. The NFL is in $100 million a year chump change area. $100 million a year in additional revenue. This is all new. This is not like, oh yeah, Fox is re-upping, and increasing. No, this is all new money. And it's $1 billion over 10 years, and they're like, 100 million, no big deal. 100 million a year for the NFL is whatever. Is a yawn emoji. That's where we're at. That's why the NFL can do whatever. That's why the NFL doesn't give a damn about its officials.
Yeah.
We're still gonna watch. You, me, everybody. We're all the sheep just following, our leader. 100 million a year and whatever. Oh, great. There you go. 100 million a year. 100 million a year. Incredible. Coming up next, we'll get to a little hoops and our Super Bowl prop bet for Wednesday. Will get asked by an NFL media member if the league is scripted.
Someone's going to say it. I can guarantee it. Someone's going to say it.
At the top of the hour, noon there, 1 o'clock here, is when Roger Goodell will have his State of the Union address for the NFL. Real quick.
Yeah, what's up?
Biggest topic right now in the NFL. Like, what's the biggest concern for the NFL? Biggest
officiating.
Is it officiating?
It's officiating. This is the number one thing with the league right now. Like, when you really look at it, because we make the jokes about the NFL rig and the NFL being scripted, like you and I are making this completely in jest. And to be fair, a lot of people who bring this up anymore are doing it in jest. Like, there was a time Pat McAfee had a little segment on his little show, which is a bunch of yahoos doing a show, which in small doses is very entertaining. Large doses, grating. For them, it's a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's funny. Then there are the nut jobs that think the league is legitimately rigged. Jason Kelce leaned into it during Super Bowl Media Week. Someone brought up to me and was like, man, I didn't like the script this season. I got my ACL torn. I talked to Raj, but I knew who it could be. And he had to send Ed Reed in to hit my knee. And like, players are taking fun with this. But all of like this league is rigged thing that is kind of taken its own life here, it stems from officiating.
Mm-hmm.
That's its entire nucleus. That's the entire thing that created this whole NFL, a hashtag NFL rigged that was trending after the AFC title game was all about the referees. Like, Roger Goodell's and the NFL's problem A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, J, and K is officiating. Then we can start getting into injuries, concussions, lawsuits, stuff like that.
Okay.
Then we can probably start to get to Dan Snyder a little bit. But they're not, like, Roger Goodell's main issues he should address today is officiating. What is the plan for officiating? What is his confidence in the system? What is his idea to renew fan confidence in the system? Because that's where any fan that legitimately tries to go into a little bit of the tinfoil hat NFL being rigged, it all goes to officiating. It all goes to they paid off the refs, so like the refs know to throw a flag here to even it out. It's the safest way, to make the game outcome what you want it to be is have the refs kind of orchestrate it. Like, Roger Goodell has to find, like, if he is serious about understanding the pulse of the fans of his product, he knows that he needs to find a way to renew confidence in officiating. But at the same time, as we've also noted, the NFL's going to print money no matter what they do, so he might not do anything.
And that's the thing. You're still talking about it. Like, you're
still consuming the product.
You're still consuming the product. We're not ever going to go away, whether, do you really want to rock the boat too much? And I'm going to play the referee's point of view. Okay. The referee, a lot of people say, well, the referee should be full-time employees. Just pay them full-time. Because right now they're not.
No, they're part-time.
There's a union.
Yep.
That's the reason why we had the infamous touchdown incomplete Seattle.
They're replacement refs.
So, in Seattle against, Green Bay.
There is
Seattle.
the NFL Referees Association.
They don't want to be full-time employees. And here's the reason why. They like the fact that they get to do other stuff throughout the year. Yeah, they like the fact that they don't get it. If you were an NFL referee, you wouldn't want to be full-time for them either.
No. And that's why I also just don't think full-time is the real big solution. I think there's a part of this that the referees can get better by having more time to, look over film, have meetings, really understand the rules, be able to identify it faster. A level that can help. There's also a real basic way, which is another thing they can't do and the NFL really won't ever be able to do, or at least has not tried to find the right ways to do it. And it's just accountability. It's the same thing with umpires in baseball. Like, the answer isn't necessarily more training. That's a helpful thing, and you can find a way to do that within the constraints of what you currently have. The most effective way for the NFL to renew confidence in officiating and make it better is you punish bad officiating. Like, that's how you do it. Now, with the NFL Referees Association being a thing, that's not it's not fully simple. They have those workers have their own rights, and that is what they should have. There's a middle point we can find. It's just the NFL doesn't want to try and find it. They don't want to create accountability. But that is the simplest way to do this. Because when this comes around, we always talk about, make them full-time to this stuff. And that could work. But the best thing they could try and do is just make a better system of accountability. Carl Sheffer's crew throws the most penalties of any crew this year. And consistently throws the most flags of anyone. NFL should set up a committee or have a system in place to review calls made by referee crews. And if Carl Sheffer's crew is throwing the most flags, but they're often right, and it's like, yeah, their games are flag fest, but they're just calling games that are flag fests because teams are committing a lot of penalties, then there actually should be no punishment to him. But if it's found out that their games are flag fest because they don't have a proper understanding of the rules, well, then you target those crews, you try to make them identify what they're doing wrong and try to fix it. And if they don't, they lose their job like every other worker on the planet.
I think the problem with that is there's not enough who can do it at that level.
And that is true. A supply problem can exist. No, I agree.
That's it. So Roger will be speaking to the media. I do think officials will be the first one. But other than that, on the field, I think that they're gonna hopefully, but this falls under the umbrella of officiating. The roughing the passer rule, that type of thing. Still, is it a catch? Is it not a catch? Not as big a deal. I think they've gotten better at that. But outside of all of those discussions, by the way, the Commanders, according to a report, will be sold after the Super Bowl. And they're going to, Bezos' name is linked, which that's
welcome your new owner of the Washington Commanders, Jeff Bezos.
Yeah. I don't know how that's going to work out.
Here's how it's going to work out, at least in I know you're a part of this, some of the post-sale things.
Yeah.
What's going to happen is everyone's going to put in their bids. A bunch of people are. Jeff's going to go, all right, and I'm going to price this right and just put $1 higher than that.
Yeah, that's basically how
because money's no object to him.
Yeah. Yeah, that's going to be interesting.
That's the logistics of the sale. Everything else afterwards, a little bit different.
Yeah. Let's get to K-State versus TCU.
Let's do it. That was very enjoyable. I had a good time.
K-State ran away with it in the second half. K-State held TCU. I know the final score was a lot. TCU ended up scoring in the 60s. Ended up being 82-61. The K-State held TCU in the 50s. And the first half, some foul trouble for Keontae Johnson. And then the second half, it's more so that they just wore down the TCU Horned Frogs, and they had better talent. You can argue that the first and third best player, or first and third are most important players for TCU, did not play in this game. Eddie Lampkin, as we talked about yesterday, did play. But did he really play?
No, he only played 18 minutes. He took one shot. He was really not himself.
No, he wasn't. And that's a huge factor. And you didn't have Mike Miles, who is a first-team he was the preseason player of the year.
Preseason player of the year. He's
so
good.
That's why you get 82-61 is you had no Lampkin and no Miles. That would be like if you took off Keontae Johnson and Naquan Tomlin off the Wildcats. Yeah. You still got you still got Marquise Noel off the bench, Desi Sills. TCU still has guys, but you don't have Keontae and you don't have Lamb. Yeah, but K-State shouldn't apologize for that. You should not apologize.
Play who is in front of you.
There's nothing you can do about that. Now we can examine. Hey, K-State, their record is this. Well, is their record this because they played 4 teams that didn't have their best player? You can discuss that, but at the end of the day, right now, K-State is sitting at 7-4 on the season in Big 12 play. They got a victory which they needed, and they are 1 game back. They are 1 game back of the Texas Longhorns. They're 8-3. Iowa State, KU, and Kansas State are all 1 game back. And what's crazy about this is Baylor sits at 6-4. Right? They play tonight. You could have 4 teams. Actually, Iowa State plays tonight as well. And if Iowa State wins at West Virginia, they would be tied with Texas. So you've got Texas, Iowa State, KU, K-State, and if Baylor wins tonight, that is 5 teams that are a game back for the Big 12 regular season lead, and we have played 11 games. Iowa State at West Virginia, which low-key is now becoming a very difficult place to play.
Yep.
And Baylor gets Oklahoma. So you could very well have 5 teams all within 1 game of each other. Here are the positives for Kansas State. You've already played Texas twice. You don't got to worry about them. You've already played Kansas twice. You don't have to worry about them. The only teams that are in the top 5, and technically the top 6, you've already played twice.
Yeah, TCU.
You've played TCU. You've played Kansas. You've played Texas. You get Iowa State and you get Baylor at home.
Mm-hmm.
This is setting up well for Kansas State. It really, really is. And Marquise Noel played well. Keontae Johnson got a little bit of a bummer whistle. One of those fouls was, Keontae, what are you doing? Like, you got to be a little bit smarter than that. I hate those. Like, oh my gosh, how can you call that? That's a foul. Like, that one was a foul.
No, be intelligent.
But some of the time, when they don't call fouls, Keontae Johnson does get a tough whistle. Yeah. I do agree with that. But for Kansas State yesterday, with no Mike Miles, just take care of business. Come away with the victory. And they did. And it made me happy because they won by more than 4.5 points.
Yeah, no, it was a real good win for K-State. Like there is the frame to put out there that TCU basically didn't have Mike Miles and they basically didn't have Eddie Lampkin. He played 18 minutes, but he was definitely not himself. But K-State just played better than they did that first round down in Fort Worth. They played more together. They played more cohesive. They played a lot tougher. And we talked about this yesterday, and Dan brought up yesterday on Crosstalk as well. Losses where you're out toughed are the ones that coaches hate the most. Like, if there's anything you can control how hard you play. And I'll give K-State all the credit in the world. They played hard last night. They were physical. They were energetic. They're ready to go. Tyke Green had his best game in a Wildcat uniform. Yep. Tyke Green said he was 13 points and 9 rebounds off the bench. Like, he played great. Desi Sills kind of broke out a little bit of a funk to had his 14 off the bench. That helped them. Like, this was just a good overall team win for K-State. And yeah, they are sitting in a very, very enviable spot going forward as this season wraps up. You go to Texas Tech coming up this weekend, which playing on the road is kind of You never know what's going to happen, but Texas Tech is there's not an easy night in this league, but Texas Tech is one of the lower teams in this league, but they're still trying to fight for their lives and things like that. You have 2 road games coming up at Texas Tech and at Oklahoma. But like you noted, your 2 biggest games left are Iowa State and Baylor, especially in the context of trying to win the league. And you get them both in Manhattan. Yeah. Like, big. If they just play as themselves. Now, K-State's got to figure out this turnover problem. They got to figure this out. And particularly, their 2 best players are their 2 most turnover-prone players. Like Marquise Noel, Keontae Johnson, I don't know what it is with those 2 right now. I don't know if they're trying too hard or if they're just playing. I don't know, but they need to iron this out because they combined for 12 of the 15 turnovers.
Last thing we'll get to for a little hoops today. Baylor beat Texas Tech yesterday, 89-62. Baylor just got back a great piece off of injury.
Yeah, they did.
Jonathan.
It's a beautiful story.
Chumwa Chachua.
Jake's happy that Big John's back, not just for the fact it's a nice story, but Jake loves saying Jonathan Chumwa Chachua.
Chumwa Chachua. He played 13 minutes. He had 8 points. He had 4 rebounds, and he probably how many shots. He is a long, athletic 6'9" individual who seems to just cover more ground than you realize. Getting Chumwa Chachua back, such a big deal.
That's huge.
Coming up next, it is our Super Bowl prop bet of the day. For the day, we are going to Veasan Gambling Sports Network, and this is from Chris Rayborn. He says, Kelce is simply a touchdown scoring machine in the postseason.
That's correct.
He has been on the receiving end of at least one score in each of his last 5 postseason contests, 11 of his last 14, amassing 15 total touchdowns in that span. He has led the Chiefs with 12 touchdowns during the regular season, plus with a couple guys dinged up, plus with the amount of targets that he's going to get. Travis Kelce. He's the number 1 odds maker for scoring a touchdown in this game. Travis Kelce, minus 120. Almost like spread numbers. Like, do you think Chiefs 1.5 or Eagles 1.5? It's almost, over under. Like, you have just as good of odds close, minus 115 to minus 120. That they think the odds of the score being over or above 50 is pretty much the same as will Travis Kelce score a touchdown in this game.
It's usually a good bet. It's usually a very safe one. It's usually very good.
Yeah. I have got for mine, we'll recap yesterday or 2 days ago. Kenneth Gainwell over 4.5 rushing attempts, and then over 16.5 receiving yards for Isaiah Pacheco. Today, I'm going to go with the touchdown aspect of it. You can get plus value. You can get plus value on something that you think is going to occur. That is exceptional. Jalen Hurts, anytime touchdown, is plus 100. Jalen Hurts is a touchdown scoring machine. In the red zone, they'd have designed runs, and I think in the red zone, they are going to give it to Jalen Hurts. I think they are going to run zone read, quarterback keeper, option, just a simple scramble in the red zone. I think the Kansas City Chiefs are going to focus on Gainwell and Sanders and just trying to plug gaps, and it's going to be one-on-one. It's going to be Jalen Hurts versus Nick Bolton or Willie Gay or L'Jarius Sneed or Chris Jones or Frank Clark. And I think Jalen Hurts is going to end up on the good side of that. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. Someone's got to score touchdowns for the Eagles, and I think it's Jalen Hurts.
That's not bad value in that. He has 2 rushing touchdowns in the postseason this year. He has 1 in each game. So a little bit of the good trends there to try and play with. Not a bad idea. For my prop bet for today, my first 2 had Pacheco over. We got it down to 46.5 rushing yards, which is even better.
Yeah,
I liked that at 49.5. I still like it. I really like the idea of Isaiah Pacheco running in this one. I have Travis Kelce over 79.5 receiving yards. We went through yesterday. You have to go all the way back to the Chiefs Super Bowl win in Super Bowl 54 for the last time Travis did not approach this number. He would have been under this number against the Bengals by a singular yard. He had 78 yards against the Bengals. Like, he's going to get there. He's going to get there. Have faith. And then I have my first Eagles prop bet of this Super Bowl. I also, discussing our good friend Jalen Hurts here.
Jalen Hurts.
Under 238.5 passing yards.
Okay.
Since his shoulder injury. Do you want to know what Jalen Hurts, including postseasons, last 3 passing performances have been?
Okay, hit me with him.
229 against the Giants in Week 18. 154, 121. Well short.
You can throw out the last game.
The last game is a difficult one. I agree with it being against a team without a quarterback.
Okay. Can you throw out the game against the Giants because the Giants suck?
And that, Jake, that's fair. You know what? I had a feeling you might bring that up.
I'm not going against you.
No, I know. But
I agree.
Like that bet. But with that, though, He had 315 against Chicago before he hurt the shoulder. That's an impressive big place. 217 the week prior. Week before that, 380. Big against Tennessee. 153, 190, 175.
So only 2 games above that number.
He has 2, and that's as of most recently. All year, he only had 4 300-yard passing games.
Let me real
This
quick.
is a little dicey.
Hold on.
Yeah.
In the games that he threw a lot of passing yards, were they high-scoring games?
Let's see. 25-20 win over Chicago. A 35-10 win over Tennessee. A 24-8 win over Washington, and the 24-7 win over Minnesota.
So they weren't high-scoring games. So he got those numbers
in their
early.
highest scoring game of the year, 40-33 over Green Bay. He threw for 153.
So because I thought maybe if it was close games that he's
be
going to
checking a little more.
He's going to be throwing a little bit more.
That's not always perfectly where it is. I'm thinking they don't throw the ball a ton. Explosive passing plays are where they build their passing yards on. If you think the Chiefs can limit the explosive plays, take the under. If you think the Chiefs are going to give up some boomers, then maybe don't ride with me here. But I think the Chiefs will keep it limited on the explosive plays. Therefore, I think Jalen goes under on the passing yards.
I cannot wait till here's what we're going to do, Fulton, on Friday. By the way, Kansas cannot bet on any of the funny stuff.
Sucks.
FanDuel, not FanDuel. It's not FanDuel. FanDuel wants the funny stuff. Kansas, the state, will not allow it. I saw on my FanDuel app what you can and cannot bet on. You can't bet on Gatorade color and all that kind of stuff. You just can't do it. So we're just going to stick with football, except for Friday. We'll have the fun one. So tomorrow will be our last one. You and I are both going to do a parlay, our no sweat same game parlay on 4 of them each, right? You do yours, I'll do mine. And then we're going to combine them and do one as well to make it an 8-leg parlay.
I'm here for
That's coming up.
I'm here for it.
Coming up next, we have got a lot more to get to, including Everyone Loves a List. Jake and Fulton Caster with you. We've got plenty to get to. We're going to hear from head coach Andy Reid, including what Andy's favorite rap artists are.
The results may shock you.
Andy Reid, swear he me. Andy Reid was asked today, how do you like your coffee in the morning? And he goes,
in the garbage can.
I don't drink coffee. And then
he do truly swear he me.
And then he was asked, well, what do you drink to get you going in the morning? And Andy Reid then responded with, I don't. I just go.
Andy Reid and me, truly the same guy.
Who would have thought, you know? Andy Reid and myself.
Andy Reid gets the day going with a chocolate milkshake.
No, he doesn't even do that, apparently. He just says he just goes. Andy Reid, one of us non-coffee drinkers. You know, to the person out there is like, don't talk to me until I've had my coffee.
That's your problem, bro.
Leave me alone until I've had my coffee. No, Andy Reid wakes up out the gate. Let's go. So we'll hear from Andy Reid. We'll get to that coming up here today on Mic'd Up. We'll hear from Mahomes. We'll hear from Chris Jones. We'll get to all of that. Kellis Robinett will join us to talk all things K-State. But I want to go a little bit from last year to this year when it comes to the Kansas City Chiefs and who they are as a team versus last year. And I want to point out that, and for good reason, and actually kudos for not making it a lot about the game last year. The Chiefs played the Eagles last year. Last year, they played each other.
Yeah, they did.
And nobody's kind of talking about that, and for good reason, because each one of these teams are totally different from last year's matchup. There's really not a whole lot you can take from last year's matchup. Did you know that Jalen Hurts threw for 387 yards last year?
I do remember that specifically because I have a bunch of friends who were hating the Chiefs defense earlier in the year. And when they saw Jalen Hurts throw for 380, they had a full-blown mental breakdown. Because, oh my goodness, Jalen Hurts threw for 380 yards.
The Chiefs won the game 42-30, and the Eagles scored with 4 seconds left. The final score was 42-23, essentially, in this game. That was the final score. But here are the guys who played well for the Kansas City Chiefs who are not even on the roster anymore. Clyde Edwards-Helaire had 14 carries for 102 yards. He is not going to see the football on Sunday.
Or if he does, it is very little.
Darrell Williams, 10 carries for 42 yards. McCole Hardman, 2 carries for 25 yards. Receiving, Tyreek Hill, 11 receptions, 186 yards, 3 touchdowns. Byron Pringle, 2 for 23. Darrell Williams, 2 for 16. McCole Hardman, 2 for 16. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 2 for 12. Travis Kelce, 4 receptions, just 23 yards. This was a game that was the Tyreek Hill game. The Eagles had nobody that could stop Tyreek Hill. 186 yards, 3 touchdowns. Had a touchdown of 44 yards in this one. He was unstoppable in this game. He really, really was. Well, he's not on the team anymore. Let's look at the Eagles on their aspect. Eagles offense, much more productive, but also the Chiefs got pressure in this game. We know that the Chiefs front four is basically the same as last year, except add George Karlaftis and then sprinkle in some Carlos Dunlap. They got after Jalen Hurts. They really, really did. The Eagles offensive line, who started last year in this game against the Chiefs, 2 starting left tackles did not play, and one of their starting guards did not play. So you're looking at a completely different offensive line for this Eagles team. What about on the defensive side for the Eagles? Well, we know the Eagles last year defensively and this year defensively are completely different.
Night and day.
Add in Hassan Reddick, who has been a complete game changer for the Eagles. Add in 2 different corners for the Eagles. This is a completely different Eagle team than it was last year. A much better secondary. Oh yeah, offensively, adding A.J. Brown, a top 10 wide receiver to your team, plus offensive linemen who didn't play. It's a completely different situation. Completely different. But it's more so about the Kansas City Chiefs and how much different they are this year going into this game. And I did not realize this, but when you think of yards after the catch and teams with yards after the catch, who do you think of most?
Dolphins.
Dolphins, okay.
Dolphins up there.
That'd be number 2 for me if I would think that. But there's one other team that I think of yards after the catch is such a big deal in their scheme.
I mean, San Francisco.
San Francisco. That's what I thought. And you think the Kansas City Chiefs, right? Tyreek Hill, yards after the catch. Remember, play too deep, force Patrick Mahomes to beat you going down the field or, short, right? Yards after the catch. Travis Kelce, we know, is one of the best yards after the catch guys in the NFL. This is what's incredible this year is the Kansas City Chiefs piled up 2,850 yards after the catch in the regular season. That's over half of what Patrick Mahomes threw for in the regular season. That's the most yards after the catch in 15 years. Now, add an extra game, and in that extra game, they went against the Raiders, and they eviscerated the Raiders. Wasn't close. Mahomes has 73 completions of 20-plus yards. 73 of 20-plus yards. That's 16 more than any other quarterback and 15 more than last year with Tyreek Hill on the roster. That's the whole aspect of the Chiefs are not just better than last year offensively, but they are much better, but they're doing it a lot of different ways. And now the whole, we can just play 2 high safety and force the Chiefs to, throw short passes and just take care of business. Well, that ain't going to work no more because this is what they are doing. They completely changed how their offense runs from last year to this year. It really is different from last year to this year.
They saw some flaws that they had to end last year and realized they got to be a bit better and be a bit smarter. And personnel changed, and with personnel changes, changed the entire philosophy, and it's a different game. Like when they have chances to take shots downfield, they try. There have been plenty of times, not that they've connected at a high rate, but they've taken some shots. Mahomes and MVS have tried to connect many times on many a deep ball. Mahomes has gone downfield and tried to make big plays now and then. They still do it. Man, this offense is built on running it a bit more, and then just also put the ball in the hands of a playmaker and let him go make a play.
And that's why this game to me is such more of an unknown because of what the 49ers weren't able to do. The 49ers are a yards after the catch team. We did not get to see that in the game. Josh Johnson does not count. And even if Josh Johnson doesn't get knocked out of the game and the second half, Josh Johnson is still playing, we still wouldn't know about this team. Because if the 49ers and Brock Purdy stay healthy and their offense goes on like normal and they're able to move the football up and down the field, but the Eagles still won, I'm going to feel a lot better about this Chiefs team and this Chiefs offense and the Chiefs defense, because I know what to expect. If the 49ers can do it, so can the Kansas City Chiefs. Andy Reid with a bye week, we know how good he is there. But we don't know what the Eagles offense or the Eagles defense was going to be able to do. We don't know if the 49ers could have just ran it all over them and dinked and dunked and let Debo do yards after the catch and Kittle yards after the catch and everything. We have no clue. And that's what's the bummer about this. But the Chiefs offense from last year to this year, just night and day. And that's where I wonder if a guy like Juju is so important for this game coming up. Is a full-on healthy Kadarius Toney that important? Because what's the team that is most similar to the Eagles when it comes to their offense, their defense, having a good pass rush, good offensive line, loves to run the football. Their defense has, really good players. Like there's one team that jumps out to me that is as similar to the Eagles as you can get. What team was that?
Trying to think who has all these pieces.
Who's got a really good D-line, who has a really good O-line, who's got a strong secondary, who likes to run the football.
I mean, San Fran kind of fits.
San Fran, that's the team for me. You are right. It's San Fran. And look what the Chiefs did in that game. They went speed, straight up speed. That's when McCole Hardman went nuts on the ground, jet sweeps. But guess who also had a big game in that game?
I mean, Mahomes had a good throwing day.
Great throwing day. Awesome. He had 423 yards. But who was the guy that
was one of Juju's biggest games?
Juju's best game of the year. 7 receptions, 124 yards. How do you beat the Eagles? You beat the Eagles in the intermediary.
Yeah.
And that is what Juju did in that game. MVS also had, can they get over the top? That was the first time where you're like, oh, wow, MVS got over the top in that situation.
Yeah, he had 3 catches, 111 yards that day. No,
that's where the Chiefs build their stuff now by not going down the field. Travis Kelce, 6 receptions, 98 yards after the catch against the 49ers. And this 49er defense at that time, they were dinged up a little bit, but they played everybody.
Yeah.
That's why I think Juju might be important, but also the yards after the catch is going to be a big thing.
It's going to be interesting. And yeah, no, that 49ers defense specifically is the best, facsimile to what the Chiefs are going to face in the Super Bowl, with a good pass rush, pretty good secondary, love to get upfield and things like that. That's why, I've said all week, the Chiefs' offensive game plan should be very similar to their offensive game plan against San Francisco, because they play so similarly.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be interesting to see what they do, because I will say, for the 49ers, they're guys that love to get upfield. Yes, they have some quickness and a little bit of speed to them, but they were still bigger, more powerful guys. Eagles got a lot of light speed rushers on their team, guys that aren't really built so much on power, but on quickness and agility. And so I'm intrigued by, will that same game plan work? But the center of all of this is very much, just because these two teams played last year, that game has no bearing on what's going to happen in this one, because both of these teams are so astronomically different than how they played in that one way back in 21. But it's going to be intriguing for sure, because each team has evolved so much. But, you look back to that game, and that was a game in 21 where the Chiefs were able to get some pressure, and that was nice. But also the Eagles offensive line was incredibly beat up in that game. Only 2 of those offensive linemen will be appearing in this game. Mm-hmm. I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued at what's going to happen. And if you are the Chiefs, though, you have kind of a blueprint with what you did at San Francisco. You have kind of a blueprint. So I'm intrigued if they're going to use most of that going forward.
Yards after the catch, very, very important. But the Chiefs, the most in 15 years? I never would have thought that watching this team. Never would have thought that. For all the Mahomes haters out there, that's why he shouldn't win the MVP, because his receivers are the ones doing all the work.
Buddy, you're costing me money with statements like that. Pipe down.
Cost me money too.
Well, then pipe down even more.
The votes have already been tallied.
I know.
We're good.
He's fine. We're fine.
But those are the PFF is like, look at that. 2,800 of his yards out of the catch. That means Mahomes has nothing to do with it. Not very good. I put Joe Burrow over him.
People are silly.
Like the Eagle guy today. I mean, if you really look at it, you'd rather take the skill set that Jalen Hurts has over Patrick Mahomes.
We've just reached that point of this week's discourse.
So here's the attention you're going to get. Mm-hmm. Congratulations. You get it.
This is just my friendly reminder to everyone out there. You don't have to say stupid things to get attention. You can just have really takes worth talking about.
He really did. I am fascinated, though, what they're going to do at quarterback.
I'm very intrigued.
Are you going to give Jalen Hurts $150 million guaranteed? Because that's what it's going to cost.
It is. And here's the thing, though. This year was the test. It was, if we invested in you, can you perform?
See, I don't think this year's the test. The reason why is because they invested in other people.
Yep.
Is it the other people?
That's true.
Versus Jalen. We know Mahomes is that dude. We know he can get it done no matter what.
Yeah,
can Jalen Hurts win a playoff game with just Devonta Smith, a beat up offensive line, and not a record-setting defensive line?
Good question.
That is Howie Roseman's biggest situation.
Figure it out,
because you can't pay Jalen Hurts 150. And that's what it's going to cost.
He will command decent money.
But then what are you going to do about Devonta Smith?
Yeah.
What are you going to do about your, D-line when all those dudes, Fletcher Cox and everybody, what are you going to do? It's interesting. Coming up next, everyone loves the list. Memorable plays in the Super Bowl. Everyone loves the list. Super Bowl memorable plays. Now you got to go with what you remember.
Yes, what I've physically seen.
Okay, what do you got?
Number 4 for me, it's only 4 because it was an incomplete pass, but it's still one of the most beautiful and amazing and impressive things I've ever seen. Mahomes' Superman throw should be on any of these lists. Patrick Mahomes nearly threw a touchdown pass while horizontal.
And hit Darrell Williams right in the face mask.
Yeah, like
dude.
that play before we knew it hit Darrell in the face mask maybe doesn't get the credit it should get. He had a man in a face mask going complete horizontal. Like that ball left his hand while he was Supermaning.
My number 4, I remember this. I was downstairs watching it with my dad because my dad went full dad. Leon Lett and the fumble, and BB tracked him down, and my dad looked over me and says, "That's why you don't quit." I remember that. Leon Lett, the fumble. I remember that. Leon Lett fumbling in the Super Bowl.
Number 3 for me, Santonio Holmes' last late-minute touchdown catch against the Cardinals. That was the first Super Bowl I truly sat down and watched with my dad, as ingrained in my brain, just the toes barely staying in.
That's my number 3.
That was a hell of a catch.
It's the most underrated, I think, play in maybe Super Bowl history.
It might be.
Because nobody talks about that. That was an incredible throw and a stupid catch.
Yes. No.
Awesome. Number 3.
Absurd. Number 2 for me, this is overused and overplayed, but it was the first moment as a kid I watched the Super Bowl and went, oh, wow, that was really cool. The David Tyree helmet catch.
David Tyree,
the
number
helmet
2
catch,
for me.
Man.
It's number 2 for me.
I think it's a little overplayed at some points. And
not at all. Not at all.
That was crazy.
It was 3rd and 5 with 1 minute and 40 seconds to go.
The best part of that
is
Eli was nearly sacked and then ripped his jersey out and then yeeted it down the field.
He went full ass. Screw it.
Yeah.
This is the play.
It was such an amazing play.
Yeah. Number 2, David Tyree helmet catch. Yes.
Number 1 for me, because it's one of my greatest memories as a Chiefs fan. It's Wasp for me.
Our top 3 are the exact same.
We're never this much in sync.
No. And that's what's wild about this is like the David Tyree catch. Obviously,
it's
like
great.
That's how big it was.
That play was fantastic.
Jet Chip lost for me.
Yeah, it's just an old special place in my heart.
That's when the Chiefs won the Super Bowl. So
when they completed that play.
Yeah, like Brendan and Dan will have different ones.
Oh, incredibly so.
But the David Tyree catch will always be on everybody's list, every one of them. Coming up next, we're going to hear from Big Red.
Welcome back into Mic'd Up here on 580 WIBW. Fulton Caster taking the way solo the rest of today. Jake has to hit the road, so he's leaving here just a tad early. As Jake is headed down to my neck of the woods, Wichita, Kansas, as the Washburn men's and women's basketball teams have road tilts tonight. They are down at Fugate Gymnasium in Wichita as they will each be taking on the Newman Jets this evening. So Jake will be down there on the call. He needs to hit the roads, a couple-hour drive needs to set up. So it'll be just be me taking you through our last, about hour and a half of the program. You can hear Jake's call of Washburn basketball coming up with pregame starting at 5:15 on our sister station, Country 1069. We'll have pregame of the women's game first. That will tip at 5:30, followed by the men's game at about 7:30 or so. You never know with some of those back-to-backs how things, end up hitting. But overall, 5:30 is the tip for the women's game tonight at Newman University down in Wichita. 7:30 is the anticipated tip for the men's game against the Newman Jets as well. Again, you can hear Jake LeBon's call of that game on our sister station, Country 1069. We had our Super Bowl biggest plays, and if you have your thoughts on what you think were some of your most memorable plays in the Super Bowl, you can give us your thoughts on the Big O Tires text line, 785-272-9429. Your thoughts are always welcome, and of course, that's also in the live comments of our YouTube live stream. We are live on YouTube, as always. Sports on 580 is the YouTube channel. Give us a subscribe if you haven't already. We would very much appreciate it. You can watch the entire live broadcast of the show and hop in the live comment section as well. Our buddy Vance has his thoughts. The Philly special, a good one. The John Elway run where he got spun like a helicopter. I wasn't around for that, but I've seen the video of it. The Saints surprise onside kick. That's a good one. And Marcus Allen's 75-yard run as well. The Saints onside kick is an honorable mention for me, Vance, because that was another one of those early, formative Super Bowl memories when I really was starting to get. Because here's the thing about me, and this is a small, tangent here, but I'm just pointing it out. Because when we talk about, we have to have seen the thing for some of the things Jake and I do, I didn't get into sports till almost high school. I played sports going through my younger years in middle school. I was not a sports fanatic or a deep into sports guy until about high school. And so that's where, a lot of my later stuff comes from. But, I entirely, not really forgotten, but the honorable mention does go to the Saints surprise onside kick. That was very entertaining for that one as well. But if you have, again, your thoughts on what you think is the most memorable Super Bowl plays, text them in on the Big O Tires text line 785-272-9429, or also drop them in on the comment section of our YouTube live stream as well. There's no right or wrong answers for memorable Super Bowl plays. It's just when you're watching the game, when you think back on all those formative memories of the big game and things like that, just what's on mind? What do you have in your mind during those games? That is at the end of the day, what is truly important. But as we continue on and finish up this hour of Mic'd Up, Andy Reid, he had another session of media availability down in Phoenix going through Super Bowl week. He has to talk way more than normal when he has to meet with the media going into this Super Bowl week. But here's what Big Red had to say, speaking to the media earlier today.
I'll take it. Lil Wayne, wasn't he just at our place? Who was just at our place? You got to give me an easier question than that, doggone.
Harrison Graham from Chat Sports. Coach, want to hit you with a hard-hitting question as well. What does the perfect Andy Reid cheeseburger look like?
Yeah, I answered that about 50 times the other night. I almost forgot I was a coach. But, yeah, just it's got to have a good bun. Let's start there, right? And then fresh meat. And then you put anything else on it other than mustard, you're good. I'll eat it.
I feel like I'm going to ruin this here, Coach.
No, you're all right.
I'm going to swing this back to football, but I feel like I have to pepper it in. How do you take your coffee? We'll start there. How do you take your coffee?
I don't drink coffee, but I'm not a coffee drinker, so I don't drink it.
What do you drink in the morning then to start your day?
I just get up and go. I got endless energy for a chubby guy.
All right, my real question then. You guys are going to go through more of a full speed type practice today. What do you need to see from your quarterback to make you feel comfortable in this game plan that you guys have already installed?
Yeah, so he's been doing really well with his ankle. And we had a fast practice a couple days ago, and he moved well. He can really do just about everything. So at least everything in the game plan. that we've asked him to do. So I think he'll be fine today. Yeah.
Your partnership with Patrick Mahomes, what has been the key working with him? And you have a lot of success with a lot of quarterbacks throughout. What has been the key with Patrick Mahomes?
Yeah, so Patrick is he's easy to be around. He wants to be the best. He strives for that every day. Every rep that he has in practice, he tries to do it the best he possibly can. From a coach's standpoint, that's all you can ask. He handles himself right in the offseason. It's very tough in the National Football League for guys to handle the front office, the coaches, and the players, and not have one jealous of the other. And he does that well. So he's very respectful, professional. Grew up in a locker room because of his father, giving him that opportunity to jump in there when he was playing Major League Baseball. So he understands the dynamic of things and how things work, and he understands people. So he does very good with that. Yeah, you bet.
Coach, Andrew Wiley is your only returning starter from the last Super Bowl appearance. And he was stepping in for the injuries to play that position. What did you say about Andrew with all of the turnover on that line that he solidified and won that position outright?
Yeah, man. I mean, Niang was kind of the young kid that was coming up through, got hurt. Andrew, first of all, stuck around with us when he had opportunities to potentially go somewhere else, stayed with us, and it worked out great for him, where he's back in that starting role. He's done a nice job for us this season. He's really a tough kid. Not everything's pretty, but it doesn't have to be. I mean, he's going to fight you, and that's important, and he does well with that.
Ever since Patrick Mahomes arrived to the Kansas City Chiefs, you've done better each year, and every time, 4 years, 3 times in 4 years, you've reached the Super Bowl. Can you call yourself a dynasty?
Well, I don't know about that. I'm not really into all that. I'll let you guys deal with that. It's important in our world that as coaches and players that you try to get better every day, and that you're only as good as your last game, and so, or the next game, I should say. And so we're striving to focus in on this thing, trying not to look at all that stuff. That's good when you retire. You can kind of go, hey, they said we were a dynasty. Wow. So, but right now, you don't let that get in here. That's just away from that.
Hey, Coach, over to your left.
Gotcha.
As somebody who's so well-versed in the quarterback position, how impressed have you been with the quick rise of Jalen Hurts? And do you see any similarities between, how Patrick ascended rather quickly in the league?
Yeah, Jalen, first of all, Jalen's a good kid. And so he's fit in very well with that team. He's one of the leaders on that team, if not the main leader. And his play has proven out to be very, very good. So, and he'll do nothing but get better with time. I mean, that's just how it works at that position. But he looks like he's in complete control of that offense, and real tribute to the kid. Yeah.
Coach, right here in the front, Aaron Lett. Oh,
yep.
You've talked for a while about blocking out distractions. What's the toughest part about this week for coaches and for players, in your opinion?
Yeah, well, it takes you out of your normal routine. You try to keep it as close to that as possible, but you've got media obligations like this that you've got to do, and a couple other things that they throw in there. But for the most part, we try to keep the practices relatively the same and on schedule. So, but I'd probably tell you just the magnitude of the media and a few of the other things that you're asked to do, promotional things.
Coach, we're going to stay over here, first row.
Coach, I know you brought in Juju this offseason as you guys were trying to replenish the wide receiver room. What did you make of his season, and how willing would you be to work with him maybe to keep him here long-term past this year?
Yeah, Juju, first of all, is a good kid. He's a lot of fun to be around and loves to play the game. He's a great balancer for Kells. So you like to have somebody with a common components that plays opposite Travis, and Juju has that. He knows how to play in space. He's a big target. He's tough to tackle once he has the ball in his hands. He has great hands. And he's smart. He knows, he understands the game.
Over here.
Gotcha.
Yeah. You've already talked a little bit throughout the season about the contributions that Matt Nagy's provided, but can you kind of summarize as the season's coming to a close, what he's been able to do, why you decided to bring him back, and what the impact of having him has been on your offense?
Yeah, listen, I think Matt's a great coach. I think he knows people, handles people well. He's a good teacher. The players respond to the way he to his approach to coaching. And he had a relationship with Pat Mahomes. And so it was a natural fit for him to come back here. It was just a matter if he wanted to sit out a year or get right back into it as an assistant coach. And so he did. He wanted to jump back in and go, and we're sure glad to get him. Yeah. Okay, gotcha.
Coach, I know you're focused on football, but when you look at yourself, how have you changed from your first Super Bowl? How have you changed as a person? How have you changed as a coach in your approach to your job?
Yeah. I don't think I've changed much that way. I've lost a little more hair and not weight, but it's about the same picture that I did for the first Super Bowl. It's very similar to when I was in Green Bay and under Mike Holmgren, kind of same format, and it was the same for him when he was under Bill Walsh at San Francisco. So, that part's fairly consistent, I think, if you look through the years.
Good morning,
Gotcha.
Coach Reed. Evan Walker, WXCI 91.7 FM.
All right.
I just wanted to ask you, when it comes to defensive game planning against Jalen Hurts, do you think it'd be worth it to put a spy on him or just have that linebacker drop back into coverage?
Well, you got to keep an eye on him for sure.
Experiencing some minor technical difficulties with Andy Reid here. We will get him back up momentarily. This is the part of live radio that is just a joy, is when our technical issues come in and affect a little bit of what we're playing here. But give us just a moment and we will get Andy Reid's audio back up, running, and set to go here, as Andy Reid was speaking with the media earlier today. And here, as we resume here, is what Andy Reid met when he was speaking to the media earlier today.
Good morning, Coach Reed. Evan Walker, WXCI 91.7 FM.
All right.
I just wanted to ask you, when it comes to defensive game planning against Jalen Hurts, do you think it'd be worth it to put a spy on him or just have that linebacker drop back into coverage?
Well, you got to keep an eye on him for sure. He is a great runner, but he also can throw the ball well. So, but you better keep an eye on him somewhere there, whatever approach we take.
Coach, I'm from Germany. What does this, you've been to several Super Bowls, what does this one mean to you? And obviously every Super Bowl is special, brings special challenges. What's the biggest challenge this time?
Yeah, so it is special. I think the older you get, the more you appreciate them. And then the challenge is the Philadelphia Eagles. So they've got a good football team. And we're in that preparation part of that. And we want to make sure that as coaches, we give the players everything they need to be successful, and physically, mentally alike. And so that's the process we're in now. We got a couple more days to get that done. And then we cut everybody loose and we go play and let the chips fall where they may. And we look forward to playing in Germany this next year. We're very excited about that. So,
we're going to go 3 more. We're going to go here in the middle of the room and finish up front.
Michael Vick told us yesterday that one of the great things that in order for a mobile quarterback to be successful is to have the right head coach. And so he mentioned you and said that it was great for you that you had embraced Patrick Mahomes the way you had when you discovered his style. When did you discover his style? When did you know the kind of quarterback you had? And when that happened, what were your thoughts as far as your playbook? Was that a challenge? Did it maximize your playbook? And my second question, mi segunda pregunta como mexicana, es, ¿te encanta la carne asada? O por lo menos es lo que nos ha dicho, que te gusta la comida mexicana. ¿Cuál es tu plato favorito? What is your favorite Mexican dish? As we've been told, you love Mexican food.
Yeah, there's not a lot of food I don't like, but yeah, that's Michael Vick's right. I like quarterbacks that are mobile. That's been part of this offense for a long time. Joe Montana, Steve Young, they were mobile quarterbacks. Then Donovan McNabb came in, and he was a mobile quarterback, and it just kind of has fallen right in line with that. Brett Favre, who's not the fastest guy in the world, very similar to Patrick, not the fastest guy in the world, but still had a lot of yards running the ball when needed. The important thing to add to that, and all those guys had this, was their ability to keep their eyes down the field. And so if there was an available throw that they could get the ball out to the receivers in that time. So, and then thus didn't take as many hits running the ball as you might think of with a running, with a quarterback that's running the option or something of that sort. So, but that I didn't have to change the playbook much at all. It's all kind of built in there. As far as Mexican food, if you guys have not had a chili relleno burrito, you need to try one.
That was Andy Reid speaking earlier today. Here's my thing. I will say, out of anything, first, some interesting thoughts there on what the Chiefs will do defensively if they'll try and spy Hurts and things like that, and some of the different schematics they'll do for the football coming up in Super Bowl 57. What I will say is this. Y'all got to stop asking Andy Reid about food. You can hear the tone in his voice that he is so over some of these food questions. Like, a man asked him, about what's the perfect Andy Reid cheeseburger, and he led off with, I feel like I've answered this like 3 times last night alone. Jake and I kind of made a comment about this, like, opening night, Super Bowl opening night on Monday was your time for your silly questions. Now is the time for more football-related stuff. I get that there is a lot of different media at these events, more media than normal, because it's such a worldwide event, and some people like to, get the funny stuff, get the humors, whatever. When you can tell a guy's just kind of over it, maybe find a different shtick. That's kind of my only point on that. It was still some good insight from Andy Reid. You can still get so much of it. What they're going to try and do offensively, and some of the things Mahomes has been able to do with the way he can battle through things, and getting some insight from Andy Reid in these days with the Eagles and stuff like that. But overall, that's the only downside of some of these moments here at Super Bowl Media Day. That'll do it for this hour of Mic'd Up. Coming up in our 2:00 hour, Kellis Robinett's going to join me as we chat all things K-State and get his thoughts on K-State's win last night over the TCU Horned Frogs. We're going to hear a little bit from Patrick Mahomes and Chris Jones when they spoke at Super Bowl Media Availability earlier on today. Then we'll also take another look at the Chiefs and how their defensive game plan for the Eagles is shaping up for Super Bowl 57. That is all coming up here in the 2:00 hour of Mic'd Up. It's time for the final hour of Mic'd Up here on 580 WIBW. Fulton Cast, you're here with you riding solo for the final hour of today's show as Jake Laban is headed down to Wichita, my very biased opinion, favorite city here in the state of Kansas, as the Washburn men's and women's basketball teams will take on the Newman Jets in doubleheader action coming up this evening from Fugate Gymnasium in Wichita. Pre-game starts at 5:15 for the women's game. You can hear all of that. Jake's coverage of the games with a 5:30 tip for the women and a approximately 7:30 tip for the men. You can hear all of that coming up on our sister station, Country 1069, later on this afternoon. Coming up in this 2 o'clock hour of Mic'd Up, we're going to hear from Patrick Mahomes and Chris Jones. They had their own little snippets of media availability down in Glendale. We'll hear a little bit of what they had to say on some various topics here today. We'll discuss the plan for the Chiefs defense coming up against the Eagles coming up here and what they should do in Super Bowl 57, how they should balance their defensive strategy and how they should seek to deal with the Eagles offense and how potent it's been this year. As always, you can join in on the conversation on the Big O Tires text line, 785-272-9429, or in the comment section of our YouTube live feed. Go to youtube.com. Sportszone 580 is the YouTube channel. Give us a subscribe if you haven't. We would appreciate it. And you can jump in and give your thoughts, questions, comments in the live comment section of that feed as well. But where we will begin this 2 o'clock hour of Mic'd Up, We'll begin by chatting with our good friend Kellis Robinett, covers the Kansas State Wildcats for the Wichita Eagle and the Kansas City Star. You can follow Kellis on Twitter at Kellis Robinett. And Kellis, I'm going to begin here because I just have to know your opinion. Is Jerome Tang getting K-State fans to not chant the chant during Sandstorm already the greatest accomplishment of year one of the Jerome Tang era?
It's right up there. I would say it was just that seems just as unlikely as it is that Kansas State already has 19 wins and is probably in the field of the NCAA tournament right now. So it's right up there with some of the other wins he's had. And yeah, he's made a big impact here already.
It's truly amazing. I was not in the building last night. Dan was for us, but I was watching it on TV and I heard Sandstorm starting. When I didn't hear the chant, I was like, wow, Jerome Tang, give him the Nobel Peace Prize, send him to settle conflicts at the United Nations or in Congress or something, because apparently there's nothing Jerome Tang cannot do if he can get the K-State students to let Sandstorm be back by just chanting KSU. To the actual product on the court with the players last night, K-State gets a big win over TCU, 82-61. Just overall broad scope, what do you think was the biggest difference this time around for K-State in the win over TCU compared to when they battled in Fort Worth about a month or so ago, when it was kind of one of the roughest games for K-State this year? What do you think was just kind of the biggest turnaround when you think about these two performances for K-State?
I mean, the biggest difference was TCU was a shell of the team that beat Kansas State in Fort Worth. They didn't have Mike Miles, who's one of the best three guards in the Big 12. He watched from the bench. Eddie Lampkin, who's one of the best centers in the Big 12, played, but not very much, and he was pretty clearly hobbled, missed some open layups, just didn't look like himself. So it would kind of be like TCU trying to play Kansas State without Keontae Johnson or Marquise Noel. It's just not as good of a team. So, I mean, yeah, Kansas State, I'm not trying to say they didn't play well. They did a lot of good things, especially late. They showed a really good killer instinct to finish that game out with a 17-2 run. They also cut down on turnovers quite a bit. They won the turnover battle for the first time in a while. Didn't let TCU go crazy around the rim, which has hurt them in the past. But, I mean, bottom line, you take away TCU's best players, they're just not very good. They're the worst shooting team in the Big 12. And one thing I will say Kansas State did a very good job of in this game is they really invited TCU to shoot from the outside, which, like I said, they're very bad at. And they threw zone defenses at them. They sagged up their shooters. It was basically just the whole game saying, please, please, please shoot out there. TCU responded by shooting a bunch out there, missed a whole bunch of shots, played right into K-State's strategy. So they did some nice things, but end of the day, that's not a top 20 team they beat out there without Mike Miles.
I think that's very fair. Without Mike Miles, with a hobbled Eddie Lampkin, it does change the way that TCU can play. When it comes to K-State, one of the things I noticed watching this team play, at least immediately from the jump, there seemed to be a renewed effort and intensity, especially on the defensive end for K-State in this contest, which is notable to me, at least, because after the loss to Texas, where they blew the big halftime lead, Jerome Tang seemed to discuss, his team was out-toughed and out-muscled, and that is, I think we could all know is one of the big sticking points coaches will have always is when their team gets out-toughed. How do you like K-State's intensity last night and the grit that they showed in response to that loss to Texas, where it seemed in the second half they kind of lost their way and let themselves be bullied a little bit, whereas in this game against TCU, it might have been with a down man TCU team, but it still seemed like K-State played with a renewed energy and toughness in this one for 40 minutes.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Jerome Tang challenged his team to be tougher, to be more physical, to rebound the ball better, take care of the ball better, play like a better team. And a good sign of a good college basketball team is when they do take a loss they're not happy about, they turn around and just whip the next team on their schedule. That's what Kansas State did here, out-rebounded TCU 40-28. Like I said earlier, they forced 19 turnovers and only committed 15 themselves. Unlike in the Texas game where they were getting beat for every single loose ball, Kansas State was on top of things this time around. So really no complaints there. And the fact that they were able to do it with Keontae Johnson once again in foul trouble, only seeing 25 minutes, goes to show just how ready this team was to play, because they did rely on their bench more than usual. Heike Green, Desi Sells both came off the bench and scored 10-plus points. that was really nice to see and a good change from them.
I'm glad you bring up Tyke Green. I wanted to get to him here. He must really like playing the TCU Horned Frogs. Tyke Green has 2 double-digit scoring games this year. They are both against TCU. In addition to just the 13 points Tyke scored last night, he also grabbed 9 rebounds, which as a 6'4" guard is always impressive. What'd you see out of Tyke Green last night? And is this just kind of a game to where he was one of the ones that maybe took Jerome Tang's message really to heart and just decided to play with that renewed energy and toughness? Or just overall, what did you see that kind of led to not necessarily a full coming out party, but easily Tyke Green's best game overall of the year?
Yeah, well, he had motivation on his side in this one. Apparently, he went to Jerome Tang at some point in the last week, and didn't so much complain about not having as much playing time as he wanted, but just kind of like a man told his coach, "Hey, what can I do to help this team? I want to be doing more than I am right now." They had a heart-to-heart, and he came out and really, did a lot of the small things that Jerome Tang was looking for, and they impacted the game. Like you said, he comes out there and has 13 points, threw down a really nice dunk on a pass from Keontae Johnson. The 9 rebounds is probably the most impressive thing of all, that he could have that much production in 21 minutes. Really good game for him. The question with him moving forward is, can he find any modicum of consistency? Because you're right, he's played great in 2 games against TCU. He had another game very early on the season, where he had some dunks, and I thought, boy, this could be a really good player off the bench. But then he just disappears for 5-6 games at a time. So trying to figure out how to do more of what he did last night, and less than those other nights I was just talking about, is what he needs to do if he's going to be an actual factor here for this team.
Moving from the bench players and guys like Tyke Green and Desi Sills to the stars of this team, Marquise Noel and Keontae Johnson, I'll kind of start with what I feel might be the biggest thing that K-State maybe needs to sort going forward. They committed 15 turnovers on the night. 12 of the 15 were by Keontae Johnson and Marquise Noel, who both seem to have been having a turnover problem over these last few games. Watching these last few games, seeing what's kind of been happening, what do you think is kind of the source of this turnover bugaboo that Noel and Keontae Johnson seem to have been going through as of late?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. For Noel, I think it's mostly just that he has the ball in his hands so much that he's going to have some turnovers. Now, you don't want 6. You'd be much more comfortable with 3 or 4, or even 2. But he did send out 7 assists last night, so he had more assists than turnovers. I think with him, it's more just that he's out there 39 minutes. He's handling the ball all the time. It's probably not realistic to sit here and demand that he never have a single turnover. He could be a little bit more cautious with the ball, take a few less unnecessary risks, but any point guard could. If you're going to point your finger at anybody and say they're committing too many turnovers, it's definitely Keontae Johnson. That's been a bugaboo, to steal your word, for him all season. If he didn't have the turnovers that he did, if he didn't commit so many fouls, I really think he'd be in the running for Big 12 Player of the Year, because he does everything else beautifully. He scores, he rebounds, he's a great locker room guy, a great presence on the court, but he just commits too many fouls. He turns it over too many times. Those things actually go together. He had 6 turnovers last night against TCU. 3 of them were all offensive fouls. He gets called for a hook, and then 2 charges. He just needs to be a little bit more careful about how he's going about trying to score, because he doesn't always need to do those things. He's got a nice jump shot. He's got a good pass. There are certain situations where definitely you want to get in the ball, get out the way, let it drive to the basket. But last night was not necessarily one of those times. That's something that Jerome Tang said after the game, was that we need to sit him down and show him on film rather than just collide with these defenders. Stop, pass the ball out to an open man, maybe come back and get it again for an even better shot. That's kind of his next step in the maturation process, is how does he play as aggressively as he wants, where he's making points, but not so aggressively that he's committing too many fouls.
Speaking of those fouls for Keontae Johnson, that was a great point to bring up there, and that's what I was thinking about. Is he's also had a lot of issues picking up some early fouls, and want to. Do you truly just think it might just be a level of aggressiveness? Which when you're built like Keontae Johnson, you're built like a linebacker playing basketball. You can kind of fall into just the idea of I can just go through these guys and not muscle them. Do you think this Keontae Johnson fouling problem, even though I don't know if it's to the level of a massive problem, but that's just the word to use. Do you think the Keontae Johnson foul problem is just he's being too aggressive and not really being a bit more intelligent in the shot making and shot taking? And if so, how well do you think that Jerome T and company can kind of work with him to get that settled? Because in something like the NCAA tournament, they really cannot afford at times to have Keontae Johnson out the floor for reckless fouls, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think you can get it figured out. It's not like he's turned the ball over like crazy in every game, but it certainly has been a thing for him in Big 12 play. It's been suggested by Kansas State fans that Big 12 refs are just watching him a little bit too closely, that they're looking to call early fouls on him just because he seems to get in this, he seems to be in this trend where it happens, so they're looking for it. I don't necessarily buy that. Like, if you look at the fouls he committed yesterday, they were all fouls. They weren't phantom things that the refs just made up to hate on Keontae Johnson. He legitimately hooked the guy, knocked the guy over, put his arm out, shoved the guy out of the way. I mean, could you have not called them? Sure, but he's still out there doing them, committing these fouls by the letter of the law. They are fouls. So I think he just needs to adjust the way he plays just a little bit. There are certain games, where refs aren't going to call every little thing. Last night was not one of them. It seemed like every time there was contact in the lane, it was pretty much always a charge, not a block. So if I were Keontae Johnson going to these games, I would say, you know what, rather than coming out in these first 5 minutes and being uber aggressive, I'm going to sit back and rely on my jump shot, maybe let Naquan Tomlin or someone else test out how the refs are calling it, let them barrel into the paint before me, and then go from there. And like I said, you don't always have to be running over people to try to score. So that's something he'll need to figure out here coming down the stretch. But I think it's definitely something he could do. And I agree with you that it definitely is important, because what happened the last time Kansas State was in the NCAA tournament? They lost the first round game because Barry Brown was in early foul trouble, really killed their chances. They don't want to do that again with one of their best players just sitting there on the bench with fouls. So that's definitely one of the main things to monitor the rest of the season.
Kellis Robinett is our guest, covers the Kansas State Wildcats for the Wichita Eagle and the Kansas City Star. You can follow Kellis on Twitter at Kellis Robinett. All right, looking forward a little bit here, Kellis, for K-State's next few matchups. They have their second back-to-back road trip, essentially creating a road trip, the first back-to-back road games since the beginning of Big 12 play. They're going to go at Texas Tech coming up on Saturday, and then at Oklahoma on Tuesday on Valentine's Day. Those are their next two matchups. Just overall with both of these, K-State is in a different position than they probably expected themselves to be when the year started, or at least what most expected them to be, in the fact that they're not for a Big 12 title. They have a chance to only, they're only about a game out here as we enter this stronger stretch. And now you have two games coming up against not bad teams, because there's no bad team in the Big 12, but two teams at the lower part of the totem pole, but they're on the road, and those can be tough matchups. Just in the broad sense of going out on the road as kind of the team that is to be hunted rather than the hunter, what do you think K-State needs to do to avoid a potential letdown in two road matchups that they will likely be favored in, and they should win, but if they're not careful, they could get stunned?
Yeah, well, they're going to have to play their best basketball. As good as Kansas State has been this season, they're not good enough where they can look at any game in the Big 12, whether it be home, road, Big 12 tournament, anywhere where you can just say, you know what, we got this, guys, we're going to win. Probably the closest they're going to get to was last night against TCU at half strength. And, as lopsided as that game turned out, it was 6 points midway through the second half. It was closer than maybe the score indicated. But looking ahead here, I'm looking at the analytics site. Looks like Kansas State's going to be favored by maybe 1.5 at Texas Tech, maybe only a point at Oklahoma. So these are going to be difficult games. Texas Tech, I think they've announced they've sold out their game on Saturday against Kansas State. And that place in Lubbock, when it is sold out, is loud. I'm telling you, it is just as loud as Bramlage. It's just as loud as Allen Fieldhouse. When they pack that place, it is going crazy. So they're going to have to play their best basketball down there. The beauty of it is, though, the Texas Tech and Oklahoma are two teams that if you give them an excuse to fold, they're going to take it. You look at what they've done recently. Oklahoma, outside of one just kind of fluke game against Alabama, where maybe Alabama totally sleepwalked into that game, they have just been getting killed in Big 12 play. Texas Tech is kind of the same way. If you give them a little bit, show them life, they can come back and beat you. But if you play your best, you can beat them by 20. That's what Baylor just did the other day. So my suggestion to Kansas State in these games would be don't take anything for granted. Try to win the first half by as big a margin as you can, and let the other team, go away rather than letting them hang around.
All right, Kellis, my final two questions for you are two for the road. We've discussed and how, the United Supermarkets Arena is maybe the best road trip left here. But looking at everything going on, looking at everything K-State has left, what is your confidence level? We're not really going to go for kind of the odds here, but how confident are you with what K-State has left, with what's kind of sitting ahead of them? How confident are you that K-State can get at least a share of the Big 12 title this year?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm not super confident in it. I think that there's certainly a chance. I believe that every team in the top 6, if TCU can get healthy, is still in the mix here. But I don't know. I still think Texas is going to be hard to catch. I think just them only having 3 losses right now, they're going to have to slip up somewhere where you don't expect for somebody to get them. If Kansas State's going to do it, it'll be because they win these next two road games. Then they do something special down the stretch. But I mean, even if they win these next 2, you're still looking at Iowa State, Baylor. Those games won't be easy. At Oklahoma State, they're really tough on the road. West Virginia, really tough on the road. So if Kansas State can finish with 6 losses, I think they'll have a chance. But I'm just not sure Texas is going to lose 6 games. So I'd put their odds at something like 20%.
And then my last one for you here, Kellis. This is normally something I talk to Jake about, but he's not here. So I'll ask you this question for this one today, Kellis. As the Big 12 as a whole, we're getting ever so closer to March, tournament time, all the projections, everything. How many Big 12 teams do you think makes the NCAA tournament field this year?
I think we're looking at 8. I think the top 6 are pretty much mortal lock: Texas, Iowa State, KU, K-State, Baylor, TCU. They've done too much already. They're making it in. Oklahoma State, I'm maybe a little bit concerned because they lost Avery Anderson for the season, but they did just get their center back, and they've won 5 of 6. I think they'll get in. In West Virginia, I'm actually not worried about it at all. They're playing really good basketball right now. Nobody's beating them in Morgantown anymore. I think they'll find a way in. So those are the 8. I think Oklahoma's a little fraudulent. Like I said, that win against Alabama is probably the flukiest result in all of college basketball this season. I don't think they're making it in. And Texas Tech, stick a fork in them. They're not making it either. But those top 8, they're the ones who are going to be there, I think.
That's about where I'm at, Kellis. I'm feeling stronger and stronger about 8 teams getting in every day, but definitely it should be a fun one, and a lot of Big 12 basketball will get to be played coming up in the NCAA tournament. Kellis, thank you so much, as always, for joining us, my friend. Have a good self rest of the weekend, and enjoy yourself down there in Lubbock, and try to avoid any flying tortillas.
All right, I'll keep an eye out. Fortunately, they have us seated in the upper deck now, so I'll be – if I'm doing anything, I'll be throwing the tortillas with the crowd rather than being pummeled by them.
Hey, that's good. Hey, if you throw one, make sure it's all wrist into trying to get the spin on that thing there, Kellis. Thank you so much for joining us, man. Have a great day.
All right, have a good one.
As Kellis Robinett of the Wichita Eagle and the Kansas City Star. Yeah. Texas Tech, Lubbock, and tortillas. It's weird. It's a thing. They're the people down in... I have been to Lubbock one time. I have been there one time. It is the only trip I've ever made, and it was for KU softball when they played at Texas Tech. That's my only foray into Lubbock and into West Texas. Lubbock is something else, man. Like, it's a big town, but it feels sometimes like it's a bigger city than anyone would ever think about. But it at times has some weirder, smaller town charms about it. It's strange. It's strange. I do enjoy Lubbock, but K-State is going down there to take on Texas Tech coming up on Saturday. And no, Kellis is 100% right. When that arena, when United Supermarkets Arena gets packed, even if their team is not that good, that place gets hopping. They have embraced their hoops down there at Texas Tech, and it makes a great environment. That should be a fun game coming up on this weekend. Jake and I will preview that game more and more as the weekend comes along. I will give the early warning now for that game coming up on Saturday for K-State and Texas Tech. That is a 6 o'clock tip-off down in Lubbock, and you can get your groans prepared. It will be on ESPN+. I know it stinks. I'm with you. Just be prepared. That is what this game coming up on Saturday will be for the Wildcats and the Red Raiders. But I'm also with Kellis. They should win these two games, but you got to play your best basketball to do it. You can't slip up against the 9th and 10th ranked teams in the conference. These are, in theory, the bottom feeders. That doesn't mean they're bad, because I don't believe that there's a bad team in the conference. But they are the lower part of the area. You are supposed to be the top of the totem pole, part of that top at the totem pole, part of those really good top 6 in the conference. You need to play well. And I think K-State can. If I had to give an early thought, I think K-State will beat Texas Tech, but it's not going to be a pushover. It's not going to be an easy battle for the Wildcats when they head down to Lubbock coming up this weekend. We're going to take a timeout. When we come back, Patrick Mahomes and Chris Jones spoke to the media earlier today down in Phoenix for the Super Bowl. We'll get some of their thoughts on the Eagles, their defense, their offense, each other odds and ends in Super Week. All that's coming up next here on Mic'd Up. Welcome back into Mic'd Up as we move to wrap up a Wednesday edition of the show. I'm with Jake. This week feels odd. I have several times this week thought it was a day later than it was. Like this morning, I thought it was Thursday. Like I was discussing different, like I was just, thinking to myself. I think to myself when I get up in the mornings, I either think to myself or talk to my cat because I'm an odd individual. I own it. And I thought it was Thursday. All of a sudden I clicked. I was like, oh wait, no, it's Wednesday. It's like Jake earlier was like, feels like a Friday. I'm like, I don't know. It feels like the week should be later than it is. Does not feel like Wednesday. But somehow I've actually remembered what day it is. I don't know how, but I have. Super Bowl Media Day has been happening throughout the week down in Phoenix. Guys been asked very different things and the different comments. And luckily, people have been leaning more into, the game and thoughts on the game and not all the wacky stuff. But Patrick Mahomes is, of course, going to get a lot of run talking to the media. That is what happens when you are considered by some the face of the league, but if anything, just one of the most popular and well-known players across the entire NFL. And then Chris Jones, the Chiefs' best defensive player, also met with the media and arguably was the best defensive tackle in the league this year, and maybe he's moved into that as an overall talking point. They each had some different thoughts today. We have some of their different thoughts and different questions. Patrick Mahomes, though, earlier today was asked about his ankle and how it's feeling. Here's what Mahomes had to say about how his ankle is feeling before the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I don't think you'll know exactly until you get to game day. I'm definitely in a better spot. I definitely can move around better than I was moving last week or 2 weeks ago. And so it's just trying to continue to get the treatment and the rehab and get to as close as I can to 100%, and then rely on some adrenaline to let me do a little bit extra when I'm on the field. So it's going to be definitely better, more mobile, be able to move around a little bit better for sure. And then we'll see on game day how close to 100% I can be.
That's the number one topic. Going for more through the rest of this final, couple days of media, and then when the injury reports and all that come out and everything is, how is Patrick Mahomes' ankle? How is the ankle? How is it feeling? All those different things, because that's just what it's been so focused on, because it is important. It is important on how healthy he'll be and what is his mobility, but he feels good. He is apparently superhuman when it comes to his healing and his thoughts and what he might be doing and those variety of things. But no matter what, we'll see how he feels. But I think he makes a good point. You're going to have to know what's like on game day. And then there's a lull. You just hope the adrenaline kind of helps him through it. Helps him see what he wants to do. What about Mahomes' thoughts on the Eagles defense, what it's facing? Here's what Mahomes had to say about the Eagles defense.
They're great everywhere, so it's hard to pick one. I mean, obviously, I'd probably say the defensive line, just because, they're on a historic sack rate and the way they're able to get to the quarterback, and so everybody knows that everything starts up front, and so it'll be a great challenge for our offensive line to try to do what they can in the run game and the pass game of protecting and run blocking. But they got great DBs, they got great linebackers, and so when you have a great unit, it's about how can you execute and prevent negative plays, and they've done a great job, especially in the playoffs, of causing negative plays, and turnovers are usually what win and lose a football game. And so for us, we understand it's going to be a great challenge through and through, but the defensive line is a special group, and so I'd probably say that.
That Eagles defense is good, as we've noted a lot today, and even earlier this week. The defensive line, probably is one of their best parts, but the sack rate and the way they're moving and the way they're playing and doing different things. And Mahomes is right. It's going to be such an interesting test for the Chiefs offensive line coming up in this game. What do they do to deal with the Eagles pass rush and things like that? What do they try and figure out for the Eagles? But you got to have faith in the Chiefs offense, see what they can do. This is the third Super Bowl Patrick Mahomes has played in his young career. Here's what he's thought on, what he might be doing different this time around in Super Bowl number 3.
Yeah, I think you have a better understanding of the whole process, so you can kind of find those little windows where you can get a little extra film study in, a little extra rest. I think especially the first Super Bowl when I was in Miami, it was like kind of you got to go here, and you kind of were just kind of trying to figure out a way to get it all done. Whereas now I have a better understanding of the process and the schedule, and I had Ted and them sending me the schedule like a week early so I could plan it out and have a good plan for what I was going to go about my week doing.
Mahomes seems to be a very schedule-oriented guy. Which, I'm not surprised. Pro athletes often are because of how busy their schedules are and how their days are. But there's so often here Patrick Mahomes discuss, trying to make sure he has time for X, time for Y, time for Z, make a certain thing work and make sure he can find time to fit this in. And a lot of time it's, finding time to fit in rehabs and film studies and things like that. So there is just that commitment to it that is always so impressive and so nice to see from Mahomes. And it's one of those things to where it's crazy to think about in Super Bowl number that they're already in Super Bowl number 3, but it is worth noting, like at least for him specifically, it's probably a lot easier to deal with the schedules and the craziness of it this third go round because you know what to expect. Like you know what the schedule is supposed to be, you know what you're supposed to talk to, what your responsibilities are, and things like that. And so it does change as some things go up going forward. But Mahomes definitely getting a bit more comfortable coming up in his third Super Bowl. He had an interesting, someone had an interesting question. There's of course, Travis Kelce has this podcast with his brother Jason. They have the New Heights podcast, which is very fun to listen to and very insightful, very entertaining. So someone asked Mahomes if there's just two members of their team did one together. This was, I play this because this is an interesting answer. I know Mahomes thinks, you could maybe who they should do it, but maybe they might not be able to.
Do you have two players in your locker room that would make a great podcast?
Yeah, I would say Chris Jones and Frank Clark. I don't know if it'd be allowed by Ted over here, but they would definitely have the best podcast if they were allowed to have one.
I want to make it very clear right now. If the Chiefs allowed Chris Jones and Frank Clark to just give them both live mics to just chat about ball and life, I would listen to every second. Because Frank Clark on an open mic is comedy. Because he just says whatever is on his mind. Like it is whatever comes to Frank Clark's mind is what Frank Clark is going to say. That includes various curse words. That's why we don't play a lot of Frank Clark audio at times, because we got to sift through that thing tight because you don't know what he's going to say. And then Chris Jones is just a funny dude and a light, airy dude, but those two have such a great relationship. And I like that Patrick brings it up because I think something like that, to just let those two explore their relationship more and the friendship they've cultivated would be so great. Because I don't think enough people realize of how close Chris Jones and Frank Clark are. They are best friends on this team. They are buds. They are a duo, and it's fantastic to see what those two can do. Speaking of Chris Jones, he also met with the media today. Here's how Chris Jones feels that his defense and the entire Chiefs defense is playing right now.
I think we're peaking at the right time, especially later on in the last 3 to 4 weeks. I think we continue on the way we're going right now, continue building chemistry. Everyone is dialed in. Everyone is ready. We're excited about this big game, but we know what we're here for, and we're going to keep at it.
The defense is peaking at just the right time. If you really look at how well the Chiefs defense has played lately, they've made some great plays with the pass rush. I mean, that pass rush against Cincinnati was as best as it's been in a while. And I know it was against a banged up Bengals offensive line, but it still was ferocious because, the Chiefs have faced a bad Bengals offensive line before and did nothing. Whereas in this game, they harassed Joe Burrow. They got to him. Finally, were able to sack him on numerous occasions. And just how well they're playing, it was phenomenal. But every single piece of this defense seems to be humming at just the right time. And we've talked about it, a bunch today about what the Chiefs' defensive game plan is going to be, what they might try and do going forward with this defense, and what their game plan is going to be against a very good Philly offense. But with the way they've been peaking, the way that they've been playing, I got a lot of faith that they're going to be able to play pretty well going forward. Chris Jones also was asked how he evaluates when linemen, both offensive and defensively, win in the trenches, which is sometimes a hard thing to really evaluate and contextualize and understand. Here's what Chris Jones had to say about how he evaluates winning in the trenches.
Well, who is dominating the trenches? First, you want to look at the run game. What is the offense picking up per carry in the run game? Each running back. Secondly, you want to analyze, are they getting any pressure in the pass game? What type of pressure are guys up front getting in the pass game? And overall, you want to see how is the defense holding up against your offense.
I think that's kind of the simplest ways to look at it. How well is the team running the football? How well are they, being able to avoid sack numbers, things like that? Just those different metrics, even the players themselves can look at these very simple ways that when you really look at it, that those are the key evaluators that, who is winning in the trenches, which part of the line is winning in the trenches. And we'll see how it's done going forward. But it's going to be interesting for sure for the Chiefs and their defense. Chris Jones also noted what it's like to face Jalen Hurts, and if he's really faced anyone who plays particularly like Jalen Hurts at this level before.
Yeah, not quite like Jalen. He's been special this year. With very efficient passing the ball, very efficient running the ball. Don't make many turnovers. Very smart quarterback. Heck of an offensive line. Heck of a run game. They're an all-around team when you look at it from head to toe. Probably got one of the best D-lines in the game. Offense, probably one of the most proficient offenses in the game right now, other than ours. And I think it's going to be a heck of a game.
There's comparisons to how Jalen Hurts plays and maybe some different styles, but he's a bruising runner at when he chooses to run the football, and he can throw that football decently well too as well. So it's interesting to see what the Chiefs can do against this Philadelphia Eagles offense going forward. But it will be a tough challenge nonetheless for whatever the Chiefs try and do against Philadelphia. As much as I think the Eagles defense need to slow down the Chiefs is a bit more important, given how the Eagles like to play offensively. It is still important for the Chiefs that they got to find a way to slow down the Eagles as much as they can coming up on Sunday down in Arizona. We'll take another timeout. When we come back, we'll talk about that Chiefs defense, what their game plan should be coming up against Philadelphia. The Chiefs defense has an interesting task ahead of themselves coming up in Super Bowl 57. They have to stop a team that the last 2 years has been easily the best rush offense in the NFL, and it is not particularly close. But this is also a team that if you can force them to pass, if you can find a way to make the Eagles into a drop back passing team, pure passing perspective, well, that's when they struggle a little bit. But then there's also this interesting nugget that we started with earlier today that I just want to reiterate its importance. Jalen Hurts against man and zone coverage, his EPA per play rank. EPA is a metric that is called expected points added. Essentially, all it's trying to do is identify on any given play, how much are you contributing to your team's scoring. The bigger the number, the more and better you are at making your team score. Patrick Mahomes' EPA per play laps everybody constantly because he himself and the things he can control are consistently exceeding the expectations to help his team score. Jalen Hurts against man coverage and EPA per play is second in the NFL. He's sixth in success rate, just how successful their play is. Is their play successful? Doesn't gain positive yardage. Against zone coverage, he is 21st in EPA per play, 19th in success rate. In the simplest way, he seems to have this big gap, which on its face, you can see some ideas of it. Man coverage, he has Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. He can throw it to those guys and they play well, and they have some good receivers who can win in man coverage. Also, you can try and exploit some one-on-one matchups and different things like that. Zone coverage, there's often a level of having to hold the ball a little bit longer, have to read where the windows are, where the soft spots in the zone may be. There's sometimes a little bit more of a difficulty in reading the coverage when it comes to zone, whereas in man, you just try to find the open guy and make the play. That's an oversimplification of it from a guy that didn't play quarterback, but that's kind of the oversimplification of man versus zone here. And where maybe the difference is Hurts is still developing as a pure passer, and that is not to slight Jalen Hurts, but that was his big thing coming out of Oklahoma was, his passing was good, but the pure drop back passing evaluation of NFL defenses maybe wasn't on par just yet. And I think to me, that's the last step of Jalen Hurts' maturation and true development he needs to make in his NFL career. When he's got the run game going, when there's the threat of that run, especially against man coverage, Jalen Hurts is excellent. His ball placement is fantastic. His decision-making is good. He makes great plays. But when it's just Jalen Hurts has to go lead an offense and make a play with no threat of the run, he does struggle still a bit, and that is the development he needs to make. And so when you couple that, the Eagles and Jalen Hurts specifically have struggled in zone coverage with the fact that the Kansas City Chiefs this year under Steve Spagnuolo have played man coverage on just 28.6% of opponent pass plays this season. That is their lowest percentage in any season under Spagnuolo, which you combine the fact that the Chiefs have played more zone this year with Hurts' struggle against the zone. You have to imagine that's what the Chiefs are going to do coming up on Sundays. We're going to see a lot of zone coverage. I mentioned this earlier today with Jake. I think we're going to see Steve Spagnuolo get into the bag, so to speak, as the kids say, get into his bag with some of his more exotic schemes. I think we're going to see a lot more exotic blitzes because this is a very good Eagles offensive line. I think if the Chiefs want to try and generate some real pressure against this Eagles offensive line, wants to try and mess with them, if you go at them one-on-one, all five of those guys are good at sets and blocking, and it's going to be hard to win just going straight into them. I think the Chiefs are going to try and use simulated pressure. They're going to try and use different games and things up front, twist stunts, what have you. I think we're going to see some overloads to certain sides. I think Steve Spagnuolo is going to attempt to confuse the Eagles offensive line while playing zone behind it. I think the true key is not just playing zone defense against the Eagles coming up in this game. I think that is one part of the key to this. I think Steve Spagnuolo unloading the zone blitzes might need to be the big move coming up in this game. And send a few extra guys and play zone behind it. The danger there's some bigger holes in the zone when you do that. But I think with Hurts's struggles against zone coverage, and if you can speed up the process a little bit, I think that might be the best overall idea for the Chiefs coming up in this game. Whether they do it, I don't know. That is up to Steve Spagnuolo. But there is a way to get this done. My talking point last week and my talking point early on in this week has been the Chiefs defensively must stop the Eagles running the football. You have to take that weapon away. If you let the Eagles run the football and be comfortable, it's going to be difficult. Now, I still also believe that if this becomes a full-on shootout, you go to the Chiefs, because at some point in a shootout, you got to start throwing a lot more. That's a way to take over the run, is to put scoreboard pressure on the Eagles. But if the Chiefs offense gets slowed in any level, and you combine that with the Eagles offense can do what they want to do, I think the Chiefs get put in a bad spot. So I think if the Chiefs can also make sure that they do their best to limit the running game of Philadelphia, that is important as well. But zone coverage, a thing that I think the Chiefs have employed more of this year to help make up for the fact that they have so many young defenders. Zone allows them just to communicate more and not put everything just on their shoulders. Lets me put on kind of some joint shoulders and things like that. I think that's why they played a lot more zone this year. It's kind of such a change of Spagnuolo, but Spags also kind of Spags, as is said oftentimes around here. You know, we might see some straight man blitzes from Spagnuolo with some press. We might see, you know, McDuffie or Watson be asked to play one-on-one against Brown or Smith. I don't think so. We saw a lot in the Bengals game that Spagnuolo played a lot of bracket coverage. So he used his safeties to bracket Higgins and Chase when they played man coverage. I think we'll see a lot of that with Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, but the presence of L'Jarius Sneed could alter some of those things as well. But overall, it's going to be an interesting defensive game plan for the Chiefs going forward, and I am very excited to see what Steve Spagnuolo dials up for the Chiefs going forward in this game in Super Bowl 57 coming up on Sunday down in Phoenix. We're going to take one final timeout. When we come back, we'll wrap things up with the mic drop. Wrapping up today's edition of Mic'd Up with the Mic Drop. And if anything, I've just gotten more excited for Super Bowl 57. We are ever so closer. We have 2 more shows of Mic'd Up. We have Thursday, we have Friday, and we have to deal with Saturday, which is where, well, you get to have some fun and enjoy your times on whatever you're doing that day. I'll probably be enjoying some Big 12 hoops that day. And then it is here on Sunday. I just, more and more I get excited, and I'm just so intrigued with what the Chiefs are going to do defensively in that game. I think the Eagles' defense might be more important just because the Chiefs can overcome a poor showing by their defense with how good their offense is. The Eagles' offense isn't built to pick up their defense. It's just not. And I'm so excited and intrigued with what's going to happen going forward. That'll do it for today's edition of Mic'd Up. Thank you for joining us today. Coming up next, 580 Sports Talk with Brendan and Dan.